Once again, good morning, all of you. Let us continue the class. In the last class, we studied about the unemployment problem and its impact in an economy. What are the different types of unemployment? All these things we studied. In continuation with that, today we are going to discuss about Okun's law. Okun's law is considered to be a law relating with the impact of the unemployment. Why? Because in economics, Okun's law is an empirically observed relationship between unemployment and losses of the country's production. In a simple relationship between unemployment and GDP is called Okun's law. This particular law propounded by Arthur Melvin Okun, it is the author name. He introduced this particular theory in 1962. Why he have given? He just given one research article to in order to establish the gap version between the unemployment and the GDP. According to him, 1% increase in unemployment will induce or will create nearly 2% of additional GDP will be lost, a negative GDP of 2%. It may be a GDP or GNP. Later, he have refined that particular thing. The first one is called gap version. Second one is called different version. This particular second version have concretely said there is a relation between unemployment rate and the GDP rate, which is inversely related. And each time this Okun's value will be calculated based on the quarterly basis, within 3 months. So what is the changes happen in every 3 months will be calculated in connection with the unemployment. What is the rate of GDP with the unemployment rate? This particular index give a clear picture to implement some economic policy and economics strategies. This particular Okun's law in US it is called Okun's rule of thumb. More than 15 years, this particular Okun's law was implemented in US, and he concretely told that the original statement of this particular law, 2% increase in output corresponding with 1% decline in the cyclical unemployment. He said when you increase 2% GDP, there will be a decrease in the unemployment. But later in the different version, second version, he said he made it reverse. Because of 1% increase in unemployment, there will be 2% decrease in the GDP. He just made. He converted that holds good than the previous version. I'm going to give Okun's law. This is a statement. Suppose if they ask in section A, define Okun's law means you have to write that. First, you have to write the author name, Arthur Melvin Okun. Okay, that particular name you have to mention. According to him, you have to write this particular. I will read for your sake. Okun's law states that a 1 point increase in cyclical unemployment rate is associated with a 2 percentage point of negative growth in real GDP. I will repeat again. A 1 point increase in the cyclical unemployment rate is associated with 2 percentage points of negative growth of real GDP. The relationship varies depending upon the country and time period under different considerations, because GDP will be influenced not only by unemployment but also other factors are there. So, but this particular thing, when we make a correlation between unemployment and GDP, this is a relation is existing. Prevalently, it is correct. Almost it is nearer to the accuracy. But most of the economists are not ready to accept this, because another author, Martin Chaudhary, he just made one study and he compared with the unemployment and GDP, and he considered not only the developed country but also the developing country. His result is different from Okun's law. Why? Because 1% increase in unemployment is 3% decrease in GDP in the developing country. So Okun's law is not a rule of thumb. So it is also be considered. Unemployment is influencing the GDP. I agree, but not the correct percentage. Martin Chaudhary have made a clear statement. After that, a number of studies have been conducted in different countries, but finally they accept that Okun's law is correct. More or less the same changes is happening, and the latest study says around 0.7% of GDP is changed for every 1% of unemployment in case of developed countries, and 3% change in the developing country. This is the current state of relation between the unemployment and the GDP. But you can expect one more question. Whether this unemployment alone is influencing the GDP, definitely it is not. So there are several reasons why GDP may increase or decrease. More rapidly, the unemployment decreases and of course increases. Why people are keep on implementing economic policy or economics, all these things in order to generate the employment. Through that employment, income should be increased. Through that income, saving will be increased. Because of the saving, the investment will be converted. That investment will be in the industrial sector. Once again, we will create more employment also. That is the basic idea. This is the viscous circle of the economy. But that particular GDP not only influenced by the unemployment, there are many reasons. I will say one or two. The reduction of multiplier effect created by the circulation of money from the employees. It is a major factor which influences the GDP. So multiplier effect is more effective than unemployment. The second one, the unemployed person may drop out the labor force. Actually, when we calculate the GDP, we have to consider all three sectors, and based on that individual income, it is aggregated. But labor force, when we compare the labor force, only employed will be calculated. But manpower is not the actual thing. Those who are not employed will not be in the scene. It may be disguised unemployment. This may be a seasonal unemployment. At that time, if he is not employed, then it is not. But the rest of the 6 months, he may work in the agriculture. That is not counted. So this is another major factor which influences the change in GDP. The third one, employed workers may work shorter hours. 8 hours of work they will say, but actually when they are getting the organized one and confirmed salary is there, they will not work for 8 hours. They will work only, they try to escape from the work and they will keep on postponing. This only makes the GDP lesser. The productivity is lesser. The labor productivity decreases because of this particular reason. There are many other reasons the labor productivity is decreasing. Perhaps the employer retain more workers than they need. This is called disguised unemployment. Suppose ஒரு ஒர்க்கை வந்து 10 பேர் அங்க சேர்த்துக்கணும்னா வேற வழி இல்லாம பொலிட்டிக்கலோ சோசியல் இன்ஃபுளுன்ஸ்னால என்ன ஆகுது 12 பேரை சேர்க்கணும். அந்த 2 பேர் இருக்கு பாத்தீங்களா டிஸ்கைஸ் எம்ப்ளாய்மெண்ட் 10 people salary will be shared with the 12 people. So indirectly it affects the production. Disguised unemployment, too much of anything is good for nothing ஆயிடும். 2 பேரை சமைக்கணும்னா 10 பேரை சமைக்க விட்டா என்னன்னா அந்த இடமே மெஸ் ஆயிடும். எவ்வளவு தேவையோ அதுக்கு கொடுத்தாதான் ப்ரொடக்டிவிட்டி ஜாஸ்தி ஆகும். Too much of anything is good for nothing. கடைசியா ஒன்னு சொல்லி முடிக்கிறேன். One particular implication of Okun's law is increase in labor productivity or increase in size of labor force can mean that the real net output grows with the net employment rate is falling. நல்லா புரிஞ்சுங்க. Okun's law stating the relationship between the unemployment and the GDP. But while calculating the unemployment, the labor force is of two types. One is he who has the employment, he who has no unemployment. So both the things should be calculated. So real net output grows with the unemployment rate. So when that is, we are considering only the employed people, definitely that will affect. Those who are not employed means when compared with the employed, we have to say the percentage. Total employment is needed. That is why instead of saying the single value, you should give the ratio value. That is why the jobless growth having a predominant role in influencing the Okun's law. So now let's move to the mathematical formula for Okun's law. That is why this particular question you may expect as a case study. Sometimes people will not ask this particular thing theoretically. They will give what is the actual output, what is the potential of a GDP. Based on that, kindly calculate the unemployment rate, or what we mean by natural unemployment rate, how it is calculated. So whenever they ask about the unemployment and GDP, you just blindly write about the Okun's law, and this is a formula. Y bar minus Y divided by Y bar equal to C into U minus U bar. What is there? Y? It is the actual output. Y bar is a potential GDP. That means the link between the actual output and potential GDP. That means because of the unemployment, because of the disguised one, because of the seasonal unemployment, how the actual is changing to whether we achieve the target or not. So this is the actual output is one thing. We expected something. That expected output is the potential GDP. Suppose 100 ton should be produced. Actual is 80 ton means 100 minus 80, 20 is pending. What is happened because of this unemployment problem? So here they use the actual unemployment level. UR is a natural rate of unemployment. There are certain people, those who are more than 58 days, they will not work because they want to enjoy their retired life. Less than 18 people you cannot employ because of child labor. But actual cost will be more. So these kind of natural rate of unemployment, suppose somebody is disabled and they mentally insane, these people are not, we cannot employ them. So it is a natural rate of unemployment. So these things are to be considered. Here the C represents a factor relating to the changes in the unemployment because of the changes in the output. This particular C is a coefficient. It's nothing but one simple regression equation. I once again say Okun's law is a empirical evidence for expressing the relationship between unemployment and the GDP. 1% of increase in unemployment will give 2% less in GDP. How to calculate that? Y bar minus y divided by y bar equal to C into U minus U bar. You just write what are these five, then you can get the right answer. With this, I am completing.